taking over the room. That's great. Good morning. Good to see all of you. I'm Vicki Bailey. I chair the United States Energy Association Board, and it is my pleasure to welcome you this morning to the launch of the 2014 World Energy Trilemma report. USEA, under our strong and wonderful Executive Director, Barry Worthington, who is a little under the weather this morning. We hope he will still be able to join us. But under his direction, we have been long-standing and active member of the World Energy Council, and we are truly honored to host this momentous occasion. We want to congratulate the World Energy Council as well as their project partner and USEA member, Oliver Wyman, for their outstanding work in producing such an extensive and informative report. And I'm confident that you will hear engaging dialogue and views from my fellow colleagues who will serve as your panelists this morning, and my good friend Joan McNaughton. Joan and I served together on IEA, she representing her country, I representing mine, so we've gotten to know each other quite well, and she will be leading the discussion today. So it's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Marie-Josée Nadeau, Chair of the World Energy Council. In addition to serving as Chair of the World Energy Council, Marie-Josée is the Executive Vice President, Corporate Affairs, and Secretary General of Hydro-Quebec. She took the responsibility as Chair of WEC at the World Energy Congress in 2013 in Daegu, Republic of Korea. Marie-Josée has been active in the WEC community since 1998. Please welcome Marie-Josée.
Thank you very much, Vicki. Actually, it's a real pleasure for me to be here. I started being active in the WEC community, as you mentioned, in 1998, and that was in Houston, so I'm almost back home. Good morning, all. It's a pleasure to be here to launch the latest edition of the World Energy Trilemma report. Of course, I would like first to thank Joan McNaughton and the study group for their hard work in producing yet another insightful and valuable report. I also thank our project partners, and François Austin is here, for their continued support, as well as the leaders from the finance sector who provided such candid input. Of course, USEA, Vicki Bailey, Chair, and I hope to see Barry later on this afternoon. Thank you for hosting us here. As Joan will run through some of the main findings of the report, I'd like to focus on three important points. The first point I'd like to make is that as Chair of WEC, I spend a fair proportion of my time crisscrossing the globe to attend energy events and, in the process, meeting with numerous energy ministers and senior company executives. What strikes me as I talk to such senior people is how the core thinking underlying the Trilemma report, that is the need to achieve a balanced trade-off between energy security, energy equity, and environmental mitigation, is now firmly embedded in people's minds. Just last month, the Colombian government hosted the World Energy Leaders Summit in Cartagena, where the Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos gave a keynote address in which he talked about his country's energy policy. Let me quote his words directly. "We share the pillars of the so-called energy trilemma, and we consider it to be a very valuable roadmap for us to continue strengthening our energy sector. In the Colombian government, we are guided by the three principles in our decisions with regards to energy, that is reliability, competitiveness, and cleanliness." End of quote. And it's not just Colombia. Other countries, the United Arab Emirates is another example, are using the trilemma paradigm as a way of conceiving and designing energy policy. My second point, and here I'm touching on the theme of this year's trilemma report, is that achieving an optimum balance of the trilemma paradigm requires heavy investments. We cannot escape this. Simply put, if we are to improve energy security, provide more equitable energy access, at the same time mitigate the effects of energy on the environment, this will necessarily require significant investments in energy infrastructures. An estimated cumulative investment of $40 trillion is projected over the next 20 years, with an additional investment of $8 trillion in energy efficiency. This is huge. Joan will speak more about the importance of the role and the opinions of the financial community, but before closing, there is one last point I'd like to make. I'd like to stress the importance of creating the enabling environment needed to make the required investments. What worries me is that in many jurisdictions, we can see proposed investments that offer clear benefits to one or more of the trilemma objectives being held hostage to a political debate in which factors such as energy security and even environmental benefits are widely ignored or in some cases used spuriously. There are many examples in this part of the world, and I'm sure the Keystone XL pipeline is on everyone's mind, but it's not just here in North America. It's around the world, and Canada has its own issues with major transportation projects, just alike. When discussing such large investments, we need to depoliticize the debate and stick to key issues, namely the benefits to consumers in terms of security and price, and the impact on the environment. Let me return to President Santos of Colombia, because his subsequent comments on the energy trilemma are relevant to this point. He went on to say, and again I quote, "We must all be aware that guaranteeing energy sustainability is a shared task. We have," and I'm talking about the whole world, he said, "the challenge of developing projects and generating regulatory frameworks that are sufficiently attractive for private players to make the necessary investments to meet energy demand." End of quote. This year's Trilemma report provides policymakers with a roadmap to achieve the framework President Santos and other energy leaders are calling for. Joan, I am now getting back to you and passing the microphone back to you to present the findings of the 2014 Trilemma report. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and could I add my thanks to the USEA for hosting us in this impressive building. I always enjoy coming to Washington. It's such an impressive city, and I've been working here on and off as a visitor for over 20 years now, and there's still always that thrill when you come here. I also want to thank the World Energy Council, who have invited me to chair the Trilemma process, which I believe is an important contributor to achieving the goals and should be seen as a tool for governments to achieve their goals under the Energy Trilemma. And I'm so pleased to hear the examples that are growing of countries that are using it to help them with this inherently challenging task. You know, this may be the first time in which the first 3 speakers at an energy event I attended have been women. So I'd just like to say how nice it is to have followed because the energy sector is, shall we say, still rather dominated by the men. So with that, I'm going to take you through for about 10 minutes the main findings. I will move fairly quickly, but then you're going to get the real insights from our distinguished panel. I'll call them up and we'll ask each of them to make a comment, and then we'll have some discussion and we'll have some interaction, I very much hope, with yourselves, because that's another feature of Washington, that one does get very well informed and engaged audiences. So I think the first thing probably is just very quickly to say what the trilemma is. You've heard from Vicky and Marie-José that it's about security, which we're defining as the effective management of energy supply, the reliability of the infrastructure, and the ability to meet current and future demand. What we call equity, which encompasses accessibility and affordability of energy services across the population, and environmental mitigation, which is very much focused nowadays on the impact on the climate, but also encompasses water and air pollution. We collect a huge number of data from authoritative sources, and we construct 23 indicators to measure outcomes. So this is an evidence-based report, and there also are some indicators on what we call contextual performance, that is to say political, economic and social stability, which is so important in defining the willingness really of investors and the ability of energy companies to contribute to the goals. Now, the first thing to say is that all countries struggle to balance these three often competing dimensions of the trilemma. I've thrown up there the top 10. The top two are Switzerland and Sweden. Switzerland was won last year, and I think Sweden was third, so not much change there. But one of the changes that I think is very significant is that whereas last year 5 countries secured the top rating, what we call the AAA rating, for their performance, only 3 managed to do it this time. Denmark and Spain have fallen out of the AAA group, so only 3 out of 129 countries are in the top 25 for all 3 dimensions. I think that says everything about how tricky a challenge this is for governments and for all their stakeholders. There isn't a clear correlation with whether you have energy resources or not, and while it's true that richer countries tend to do better, it's not completely correlated, and some poorer countries, notably Colombia, which has already been mentioned, do very well, outperform a lot of richer countries, and the difference is policy, the quality of the policy in those countries. Since we're here in Washington, let's have a look at the US performance. It's ranked number 12. It does very, very well on energy equity. Your energy is cheap and everyone can get it. And it's doing very well on energy security, and that shows an upward trend for reasons that I'm sure I don't need to go into. But although it's in the top 10 on those 2 dimensions, it's struggling on environmental performance, although again there is some indication of a small improvement, and we hope in the wake of that stunning announcement from the President in Beijing with China about the ambition for tackling climate change, that trend will continue. But the triangle is relatively unbalanced, as you see. Over the last 3 years, we have been talking to, first of all, energy business leaders, then the policymakers, and this year, the financial community, about what they think is needed to drive the investment to help perform better against the 3 trilemma goals. And the investment needs, which, excuse me, I've hopped on too quickly, which Marie-José mentioned, are very considerable, both in absolute terms and in terms of the uplift from the current trend rate of investment. So at a time when balance sheets are constrained, when government balance sheets in particular are under pressure, and when new regulation is inhibiting the willingness of some banks and financial institutions to take on any investment that has much risk attached to it, we are looking to lift up the scale of investment by as much as 50% or even possibly more if we were to achieve the goal of keeping global warming to 2 degrees centigrade.